Bring the Jubilee by Ward Moore. So this book was copyright 1953, and I have this Ballantine paperback here. It's the original paperback that came out in 1953. If you'd like to pause on the back and read that, you can. And we'll get back to this map here in a minute. But this book was originally published as a novella in 1952 by the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. And then later it was expanded into a novel. Now, I knew a couple things going into this one. I knew it was an alternate history book. And I also knew that the premise was, what if the South had won the Civil War? And you can see right there on the top, that's what's stated. And I've read quite a few alternate history books in the past, and they've never really been my favorite. There's not a single one that really stood out. I've even read Philip K. Dick's The Man in the High Castle many, many years ago, and I wasn't a huge fan of that one. But I am going to be rereading that soon, and I hope I like it a little bit more on the second time around. But this one, I got to say, by far is my favorite alternate history science fiction book that I've read. I like this book a lot. It's got so much more, too, than the alternate history, which that part is very fascinating. Ward Moore speculates on how different the United States and the world would be because of this change in history. And he does a really good job thinking through many different aspects of that. But we also have our main character whose name is Hodge. And we get kind of a coming of age story with him. He meets all kinds of different people with all kinds of different ideas. And through that, we get a lot of different themes hashed out. And then towards the end of the book, we get the science fiction element of time travel introduced. It may sound like a spoiler, but it's definitely something that's stated in the beginning. This is one of those books that just has one of those amazing first lines. And it says, "Although I am writing this in the year 1877, I was not born until 1921. So right in the beginning, you know that there's going to be some sort of time travel element to this one. And I felt this book was very entertaining from start to finish, and I highly recommend it to anyone, even people that aren't big fans of science fiction, because this really did read more like a literary fiction book, and there's just a few science fiction elements that are kind of weaved into it. But let's just kind of get into what this one is about, and we'll start off with some of the world building. So the South ends up winning the battle at Gettysburg, and eventually the Civil War. And so we kind of have a whole different United States 70 years later. We've got the United States up on the top and the Confederacy down in the bottom. And they're almost like different countries. And a lot of things have evolved a bit differently than our timeline that we know of as being factual. So we have a lot of different technology that came about because of this. We have different political environment, of course, and the social aspects of the country are different. And even the whole world landscape is a little bit different. What's going on over in Europe ended up being slightly different with the world wars and all of that. And we get kind of slow world building throughout this novel. In the beginning, there's some things stated, and you're not quite sure what they're talking about, but Ward Moore just continues throughout almost the entire novel to kind of keep giving you more information of how different the world could be just based on this one. I mean, it's a major event, but he does a really good job. It's very well thought out. And so we have our main character, Hodge, who he comes from the North, and his family is very traditional. They're very into a hard work ethic, and they don't really put too much stock in education or reading. And Hodge, he has this kind of natural curiosity, and he wants to read and educate himself and maybe go to college, and he feels like he just doesn't really fit in with his family or even like his town. So at a pretty early age, he runs away from home and goes to New York. And in New York, he meets all kinds of different people. Some people are out to harm him. Some people are out to help him. He gets a lot of different ideas thrown at him. There's a lot more going on in this world than it first appears. There's a lot of like underground groups that have different thoughts and ideas of how the United States should be ran politically and with the education system and all kinds of different aspects of the world that people are not happy with, because the South is doing okay. They're not as prosperous as we know the United States actually, how it actually occurred. But the North is in really bad shape. They've kind of been in this continuous depression ever since the Civil War. And it's to the point where jobs are so hard to come by that most people will indent themselves to corporations or companies. And this involves almost like selling yourself to some company for decades. And you'll get some money up front, and you may learn some skills along the way. And in the end, you might have some of that money left, or you might not. So, and then, you might get your freedom back after that indenture is done. So our main character, he didn't want to go that route. He's looking to kind of carve his own path. And the first half of the novel is kind of him going through all this and winding up in New York. And then the second half of the novel kind of changes gears a bit. He gets an opportunity to go to this other place that's down in the South where it seems to be kind of like a commune of scientists who are kind of doing stuff underground in a way, and they're experimenting with all sorts of different things having to do with science and research and education. And Hodge, our main character, he gets a chance to go down there, and he has a very strong interest in history, and he gets a chance to kind of spread his wings down there, and that's where the novel really takes off. There's a love story that happens down here. We get more world building, like I said, the entire time. And then as it wraps up towards the end, we get this kind of time travel aspect incorporated in. And like I said, it may sound like a spoiler, but it's hinted at in the beginning, that first line, something happened. And then as you read through, some of this stuff will be a little predictable. That's one thing that I could knock on this book, but the ending was done really well. I think this is one that, whether you're a science fiction reader or just a reader in general, I think you'd really enjoy this one. So really glad I got around to reading this one. And like I said, it's my favorite alternate history book that I've read so far. And so check it out if you haven't already. So that's going to do it for that review. Next up, I'm going to read Pattern Master by Octavia Butler. So just look for that video coming out soon. And once again, thanks for watching.